I've had an unhealthy relationship with RuneScape over the last 21 years, with over 100,000 hours spent maxing out my account, attempting to go for 5.6 bill EXP, while experiencing all of the highs and lows from the removal of the wilderness back in 2007 to farming idly for gold to afford membership every year, and even multitasking 12 different accounts at once to farm for the golden party hat due to the fear of missing out on making a free 50 billion gold when everybody thought that it would become a new novelty. I'd be lying if I said that I had high hopes for this sudden announcement around April Fools. I genuinely have a lot of doubts and biased opinions about Jagex as a publisher and a developer in general. They are way more focused on easy cash grabs using the RuneScape name to manipulate players into the never-ending grind of meaningless empty rewards. I'm not exactly bragging about my accomplishments with RuneScape, as it was simply a game that kept me out of trouble, and even today, it still offers plenty of content that I've never experienced before. On that note, Dragonwilds offers nothing fresh. It's another open-world survival crafting game that blatantly uses elements from other titles. This showcases just how lazy Jagex has become, using stock sound effects that many other games even as far back as the Nintendo 64 era were using, and even animations seemingly ripped from other MMOs and games if you know where to look. It's not exactly a unique approach, and that lack of originality is quite noticeable. While I am being quite harsh in my criticism, it's important to understand my perspective. Even though I've played RuneScape for a very long time, I no longer play the game. Though I have my fond memories of it, I'm not going to fall for the fake sense of achievement that Jagex is trying to pull with this unpolished, unfinished beta release. I'm not basing nostalgia on my experience, but rather my experience with the game and other similar titles within it as a comparison as to why it is not worth your time or effort currently. It's clear it's a marketing tactic, using RuneScape as the central focus. Many players are so deprived by RuneScape 3 that they're stuck in this endless cycle of RuneScape that they can't take the hint to run and escape. It's quite the vicious cycle being trapped in a game where you're grinding multiple accounts to fully maxed out 5.6 billion EXP, completely unaware of what the game has robbed them of all of this time, including their money through their microtransactions. The review for Dragonwilds would not be complete without a long list of issues, and the game certainly has its share. From the optimization of game-breaking bugs like getting stuck in terrain or falling through the world because there are blatant holes in the ground, make the game feel like it's an unfinished project. It's quite disappointing, especially when there is so much potential that's bound to be wasted. For those who genuinely care about this kind of thing, Dragonwilds uses Epic Online Services, also known as EOS, for its multiplayer. You know what that means. If you want to play online in any capacity, you have to download and enable EOS. No exceptions. While there are plenty of skills to level up individually, Melee is the only combat skill currently available for progression, and it's by far the best and also the worst to play. This is due to the stamina system, which forces you to just sit there, getting overwhelmed by dire wolves and enemies that spot you before you can even see them. It's as if Jagex never sat through a lecture of how difficult it is to balance out stealth in video games, so they just made every enemy unnaturally perceptive. A few skills are accessible, but it's hard to explain how trying to treat this like RuneScape only makes it feel worse. In its current state, it doesn't really resemble RuneScape at all. Sure, you have the wise old man and a few things that stick out, but they didn't even use the best Xanic model. Do you have any idea how many times they have redesigned her in many different ways to make her even more uglier than she originally was? This is more of a meme that only RuneScape players will understand, but yeah, they have a Slayer Master, ugly Xanic, and some enemies and elements that are all from RuneScape. Killing monsters will only drop materials. Opening chests gives you nothing but blueprints and the same materials that you can easily find somewhere else. No matter what you do, you need to craft. You will never find a strong or unique weapon, but rather their blueprints doing the same repetitive and boring motions of entering a vault in search for dragonkin statues or chests that have these blueprints. So let's imagine you're fighting a really tough battle alone, and you've died over 20 times due to the pinpoint lightning strikes that do no damage to enemies, even while trying to exploit the use of magic or range, only to realize that everything you just struggled to go through gives you the illustrious reward of 11 air runes, a few rune essences, and a scroll you acquired 15 hours ago in a lower level location. There is absolutely no sense of reward here. The game scaling becomes awful past the swamp, and it forces you into a cooperative setup, one player spamming magical knockdowns with AoEs, while the other three focus on DPS or playing support. Playing solo with range and mage is nearly impossible, as you have to wade through overtuned content just to gather the materials that will unlock your better weapons, gear, and damage. But getting the materials for yourself is very time consuming when everything in this world is a complete sponge. Good luck trying to walk through the swamp or any body of water for that matter. It doesn't even have that level of viscosity, so there's no reason to slow the player down to a snail's pace. All it does is slow you down and make it impossible for you to deal with enemies that don't get slowed down while they're running through the swamp. The simplest workaround is to build a walkway or just jump as you land to keep your momentum going, but it's a frustrating design choice that drags out the time investment. The AI of raiding goblins and garus make it nearly impossible to have a stable, functioning base. These enemies spawn above, below, and all around out of nowhere, relentlessly destroying foundations and structures. If you're not playing melee, or with other players, you are going to have a tough time dealing with them unless you exploit their pathing and safe spot them with range or mage. It's a design flaw that makes defending your base much more of a burden. You're better off not even setting one up. On top of that, their lack of a stamina system or aggro range means that they will be chasing you for a very long time while you're struggling to stay alive as melee due to your stamina running out before the fight even starts. Because there is no agility or HP skill to improve your survival, you're constantly stuck in this cycle of frustration. You might think to yourself, just play the game with other people, it's not meant to be played alone, but that only makes the problem even worse as it scales up the game even more than it already is. Unless you have friends willing to drop $30 on an unfinished game, you will be targeted by griefers. I'm sure you know the type of players that I'm talking about when I mention a game like Rust. Similar to a game like Enshrouded when it first entered early access, Dragonwilds has no server protection. This means that so long as your server is open, any player can join, destroy, and steal all of your hard-earned materials like your vault cores, which are limited and do not respawn on your server, leaving you stranded as they take it back to their own servers. If this happens, you will have to walk back across thousands of meters of the overworld to get back to your now gone and destroyed base. If you manage to die while this was all happening, you're completely done. The enemies are already tough enough to deal with, but once you go down, that's it. You will respawn with nothing. No gear, no materials, and now no base. You're stuck wandering, hoping to scrape together just enough to start over and get back to your grave, which can also be robbed. So you end up starting a new world to grind out a few new cores and rebuilding everything from scratch. It doesn't feel like a challenge. It feels like you're being punished for thinking that a community would actually be helpful. This is why locking your server is crucial. This is fine for PvP servers because they're usually always toxic, but it is a massive flaw for PvE. It highlights just how out of touch Jagex is, as they seem to only know how to copy and paste elements from other games along with all of their flaws. This lack of attention shows the fundamental misunderstanding of what players need and want from a game like this, especially taking the title of Runescape. In the current state, it's an absolute mess. I've seen plenty claim that Dragonwilds looks fantastic and beautiful. That's far from the truth. There is no manual optimization available. You can't adjust settings like bloom, post-processing, or even ray tracing, not to mention motion blur. The options that are available are very minimalistic, that being an auto quality or an auto performance, which does not give you much control. You are bound to run into a lot of problems running the game if you do not own a more recent GPU. The game looks better when it's set low. Anything higher results in an overly bright, blurry mess with bloom and brightness seemingly set to the maximum threshold. It's actually quite hard to see anything clearly, especially with the constant fog and also the nighttime effects that is a little bit more immersive than most games. Character creation is bare bones. It's just a default popularized Bob model with minimal customization. It falls flat compared to other games in the genre, which is to be expected. The one element that stands out the most is the spells that you unlock. While they do have very long cooldowns, making them feel somewhat limited, they do add a nice layer of utility, especially when you're building a base and need a better angle or a bird's eye view. They make farming for materials and resources less time-consuming, and they're much more fun to use in different situations, like using superheat to speed up your workstations, or windstep to jump up slopes or glide off cliffs safely. It feels strange that some of the aspects of the game require the use of vessels, when you can simply stand in a swamp or a pond and infinitely gather water that appears out of nowhere. It creates this inconsistency where some parts of the game just don't make sense from a survival crafting point of view. It's as if the mechanics were designed without considering the logic behind them, leading to some confusion. The game doesn't feel like it's a beta, it feels more like an alpha state. Your character is often stuck on terrain or worse, falling through the world entirely. As a result, you will persistently get stuck in and around some random groove while fighting and end up dying because of it. It's very frustrating, making the game feel unfinished, when it's only currently offering 4-player lobbies and not a massive multiplayer experience. I want you to think about any other survival crafting game and what makes them unique. Dragonwilds doesn't have anything that sets it apart. As soon as you take away the name RuneScape, or even Jagex, you are left with another low-effort entry attempt for a genre that is already oversaturated with recycled content. It's the same formula, again, offering nothing innovative or fresh. The gameplay loop revolves around crafting, but it's not a satisfying form of crafting progression. You don't get anything out of it. You train a skill until you level it up enough to unlock a new element or maybe a spell that you're probably never going to use, like finding a bird's nest in a tree, but all you'll get in return for your effort is a pitiful reward that can easily be found elsewhere, like by killing a chicken. You don't get new locations or meaningful unlocks. It's RuneScape with every enjoyable aspect about the grind stripped away, which is hard to explain unless you personally have played RuneScape yourself. The game is trying to mimic a Dark Souls-style combat system, emphasizing dodging and parries. And while melee is clearly powerful since it's the only combat skill that is currently available to level as stated, the stamina system is the biggest thing that holds it back. Until you've unlocked the best armor and maxed out the limited melee tree, it's next to impossible to use melee effectively or consistently. The strategy is to stun and then back off to restore your stamina and repeat the process. The main goal of this game, at least in the current state of release, is to gather your materials, craft better gear, and eventually make your way to slay the dragon. Does that sound familiar? Well, it should. This whole setup mirrors the original free-to-play RuneScape quest called Dragon Slayer, where you have to slay Elvarg on the island of Crandor. In Dragonwilds, you have to kill Velgar at the top of a spire. So, did you catch that? Velgar is just an anagram of Elvarg. They aren't even trying. It's not even a clever play on words or anything. It's just Jagex being lazy and reusing ideas wholesale and banking on nostalgia to carry the whole experience. For a studio that supports mental health awareness through the fear of missing out with gambling and microtransactions with RuneScape 3, this whole experience has been unoriginal and uninspired. The only things that you need to know is that you will die repeatedly for reasons outside of your own control. Progress comes to you in scraps, if it comes at all. Whether you're pushing through solo or grinding it out with friends, it barely matters because there's no drive to keep you going. 5 hours will turn into 15, and somehow you're going to be moving backwards consistently, rebuilding your bases that have been destroyed by raids, restocking on all of your materials after you lock down your server to just focus on what? An empty, repetitive world with nothing meaningful to discover. There's no payoff, it's just the same recycled content seen in every other game in this genre, but at a lower quality. It really does feel like a late April Fool's joke, only it isn't a joke. I suppose you're going to ask the question, regardless of the issues, did I have fun? Well, yeah, in the beginning it was actually really fun. The world felt open, unpredictable, and the players that I met reminded me of old school RuneScape. Genuine, helpful, and just happy to be there for you until the griefing started. Once you step out of the beginner zone, the cracks start to show. The game stops being enjoyable and turns into a massive chore. Getting blindsided by Velgar while gathering materials and dying over and over again without a fair chance to react quickly kills all of the excitement. And as you sit there watching other players log out from sheer frustration, it becomes clear that this isn't a skill issue or a lack of interest. It's all about the design flaws. That's what stuck out the most to me in the end. Not the adventure, not the wonder, just the frustration of a game that feels like it has a long way to go. I cannot and will not recommend this game in its current state. Maybe there is something worth salvaging here in the future, but as of right now, it's just not worth your time.